another update on Catastrophe because
This has been pretty catastrophic.
I wanted to make just a little video talking about tariffs because the trade war is like over. Basically on April 2nd, Trump announced it was Liberation Day, increased tariffs on virtually every country in the world, issued a tariff on China to bump it up to 54%, and then the retaliation happened, and then now it's like over 100%. After the stock market crashed, Trump reneged and he said there's a 90-day pause and everyone gets 10% tariffs except China, who still has over 100%, except also China's exempt from certain technology. It seems like Trump folded. You know, it's not really clear what the United States has gotten from any of this. Stephen Miller said that it was going to cause a grand reshoring of American manufacturing. This isn't really how the global economy works anymore. It's not just that you have a factory that produces things. Every part in our automobile industry, for example, is made in some other country and shipped here. And not to mention, even if we bring all these factories back, automation will severely limit the number of jobs that they bring with them. So then what's really going on? Obviously, Trump doesn't care about the American worker off the bat. So what are his motivations? A lot of people have been talking about how with the stock market crash, price of assets drop and his billionaire friends are going to be able to dominate the markets even further. But he's also, and the people around him are also deeply ideological. All of Trump's policies are pointing towards something. It's not just about personal enrichment. So I want to talk about like, what is the world that they're trying to create? You can't talk about tariffs and globalization without talking about immigration. So we need to look like, what is the locus of the Republican Party's hatred of immigrants? If you look back, the Republican Party's presidential debate in 1980, George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan were trying to out pro-immigration each other. We don't see the turn away from the rhetorical argument for amnesty until the great wave of offshoring that takes place at the end of the Reagan administration, but really at the start of the Clinton administration. With the lifting of tariffs, with the passing of NAFTA, U.S. manufacturing and agribusiness outsourced their jobs to Mexico, while at the same time, foodstuffs imported into Mexico put 1.1 million small-scale farmers out of business. And this created a massive wave of immigration. And now here's the thing. If your factories are in Mexico and the workers there are like, we don't want to work in these horrible factories where they're going to pay us slave wages and we're going to come to the United States, you're going to have no workers in Mexico to work in those factories. So what do? You crack down on immigration, which is exactly what the Clinton administration does. So in 1993 and 1994, Clinton militarizes the borders with Operations Hold the Line and Operation Gatekeeper in Texas and in California. Then, of course, with Bush, we see the creation of ICE. Under Obama, we see more immigrants deported under his presidency than anyone before him. And all while this is happening, the right wing starts articulating their anti-immigration stance in xenophobic terms. Arnold Schwarzenegger supporting a bill in the 1990s that would have prevented undocumented immigrants from receiving things like public education and emergency health care. And then when he was a governor, he vetoed a bill that would have allowed undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. You have the passing of Arizona's SB 1070, which basically allows cops to racially profile. With Donald Trump, he rides on the coattails of this wave of the Republican Party and calls immigrants rapists, drug dealers. Some of them are nice people. So this is why I think the tariff war sort of ended. This globalization arrangement benefits the capitalists that supported Donald Trump's presidency. This arrangement, which his immigration crackdown is in support of, is really beneficial to the ruling class in the United States. However, Trump's not necessarily opposed to there being manufacturing in the US. He just wants it to be a certain way. And what way is that? Unionless. Recall back in 2016 when Trump was president-elect, the Rexnord Corporation had announced that it would be sending 300 jobs to Mexico. And as part of its severance package for its employees, they would be training the workers in Mexico who would be getting those jobs. And now Trump was outraged by this. He tweeted, "No more." That's a quote. No more. However, he didn't really do anything about it, which led the Union Locals president, Chuck Jones, to criticize Trump. And Trump hates criticism. So in response, he tweeted, "Chuck Jones, who's president of the United Steelworkers 1999, has done a terrible job representing workers. No wonder companies flee country." And right there, he gives the game away. He's happy to have American workers working in factories so long as they can't organize organize and collective bargain. Which brings us to the other issue with his immigration crackdown. The other reason immigration is criminalized is that workers who are undocumented have zero protection, leading to mass amounts of wage theft, which is the biggest form of theft in the United States. The Southern Poverty Law Center concluded in a 2010 study of 150 immigrant women from Latin America. The women interviewed for this report tell remarkably similar stories of wage theft, sexual harassment, pesticide poisoning, unsafe working conditions, and other abuses. They typically receive no overtime pay, healthcare coverage, sick or vacation time, unemployment compensation, retirement plans, or other job benefits. So let's think about what is the world that Trump is trying to point to. Maybe he wants some manufacturing jobs to come back to the United States, but he wants the workers in it to not be unionized, and he wants a reservoir of easily exploitable labor who have no protections under the law to be able to be utilized by capitalists if they catch wind that any unionization might even go on. John Steinbeck, in his articles that he wrote that later became the fictional book Grapes of Wrath, wrote about the anti-Mexican immigration crackdowns of the 1930s. He says, they were good workers, but like the earlier immigrants, they committed the unforgivable in trying to organize for their own protection. Their organization brought on them the usual terrorism. What's happening right now? In Kentucky, 200 unionized workers received notice that Trump was revoking their work authorizations. So when we think about these tariffs, the menial benefits that they could possibly have for a working class whose undocumented members are being terrorized by ICE, we have to think about it as class warfare. The world that they're trying to build is one where billionaires rule as kings and queens and workers have no power.